Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Runes and Red Tape, the storytelling channel where magic meets paperwork and epic quests have to be approved in triplicate. Oh, and please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything and it really helps the channel out. Right then, this week's story is called Dragon Hearth. The first sign of trouble was the smell. It drifted through the east wing of the Unseeing University just after breakfast. A warm, sulphurous tang with notes of scorched rock etched with stale urine. It lingered in corridors, curled around door frames and settled in the stairwells like an accusation. Mistress Ledgerfall stopped mid-stride. With some concern she slowly and purposefully inhaled. She coughed as she glanced at her clipboard. "That," she said quietly, spluttering, "is an unauthorized combustion." She struggled to catch her breath as she examined her papers more closely. "No declaration," Ledgerfall continued. "No risk assessment, no incident report." She closed her eyes. "This is not a good start to the day." No one else heard her words, but the walls noted her alarm. The dragon was not large, certainly not by dragon standards. In fact, to those in the know, bearing in mind only female dragons can fly, she would be classified as a juvenile fledgling. Her wings were tiny but awkwardly functional. By university standards, however, she was enormous. She occupied the Eastern Lecture Theatre with an air of mild irritation, having coiled herself round the lectern. Her scales were the colour of old pennies, and smoke puffed gently from her nostrils. Professor Blastmere stood at the doorway, frozen in a posture usually reserved for people who had just realised their retirement plan involved fire. "You're sitting in my classroom," he said faintly. The dragon lifted its head. "This was vacant," it rumbled. "I checked on the register." Blastmere swallowed. "Did you book an appointment?" The dragon blinked slowly. "Oh, yes." She glanced up at the nearby notice board, which was smouldering, and with a hint of embarrassment she added, "Sorry, but I sneezed and burnt the edges." She smiled apologetically. "My name is Hearthworm of the Third Cinder. Nice to meet you." Hearthworm yawned before curling back around the lectern. She closed her eyes. Blastmere nodded. "Right, well, that's... He gave up and sat quietly at his desk. Archmage Cribblewick convened an emergency meeting, which meant a meeting scheduled for the following afternoon and labelled urgent, of course. Ledgerfall spoke first. "There is a dragon." Cribblewick winced. "Are we certain?" "Yes." "Has it been declared?" "No." "Then," said Cribblewick carefully, "we must consider the possibility that it is not, strictly speaking, actually here. Could it be a figment of our collective imagination?" "It's eating the furniture," Ledgerfall snapped. "Are we sure that's not just rotten woodworm? I mean, some of those blighters are huge, apparently." The dragon sneezed somewhere in the east wing, and 3 windows melted. Cribblewick sighed. "Oh, very well, but first we will need to determine jurisdiction." Ledgerfall's clipboard flipped to a new page. "There is no protocol for dragons appearing without summoning. Somebody must have summoned it. Tommy was sitting in her small office. Her current title, displayed on a plaque that had already been amended twice, read, Acting Assistant Provisional Consultant for Magical Irregularities, open brackets, temporary, close brackets. There was a knock on the door. Before she could answer, Mistress Ledgerfall was standing by her desk. "There is a dragon," she said. "Yes," said Tommy, "I can smell it." "You will investigate?" Ledgerfall hesitated. "Quietly, of course." "How quietly?" "Oh, as if nothing is happening." Tommy nodded. "That's my favourite sort." Tommy found the dragon still coiled around the lectern in Blasmir's classroom. Checking that no one was around, she called out, "Hearth!" She ran over and gave Hearth a hug. The dragon smiled. Tommy took a step back, giving her friend a good look. "I see your wings are coming along nicely." With a quick flap, Hearth floated into the air before quickly settling back down with a bit of a bump. "I've still got work to do," said Hearth. "So why are you here?" "Well, apart from coming to see your old friend," Tommy smiled. "Well, I was just passing over the other night and followed the warmth," Hearth explained, curling its tail round a bookshelf. "There's a lot of suppressed magic here. It hums." She now gave Tommy a quizzical look. "Thomasina, I don't know much about the ways of humankind, but why are you dressed as one of those human boys?" "Well," Tommy began, "bit of a long story, but only boys are allowed to become wizards. Definitely not girls, and most certainly not witches like me." She paused. "Oh, and everyone calls me Tommy round here." Hearth's fiery red reptilian eyes sparkled as she shook her head in amusement. "You are a marvel, Mistress Thomasina." Tommy frowned. "Sadly, you can't stay here." Hearth sniffed. "Well, nobody's told me to leave." "That's because nobody wants to admit that you're actually here." Hearth considered this. "That probably explains all the screaming when someone comes into the room." As if to prove a point, a student popped her head into the room before quickly running away, claiming that they urgently needed to go and watch some paint dry. "Are you in any danger?" Hearth asked. "Only from paperwork," said Tommy. "Fancy a hot chocolate?" Hearth nodded approvingly. The following morning, Mistress Ledgerfall conducted her daily classroom inspections. Hearth was now curled up in the corner of Blasmir's classroom pretending to sleep. Ledgerfall faced the students, some of whom were visibly shaking in fear. "There is no dragon," she announced firmly. "But," one said. Ledgerfall raised an eyebrow. "Is there a form?" The student shook its head. "Then there's no dragon." Behind her, Hearth sneezed, accidentally setting fire to a curtain. Ledgerfall did not turn around. Hearth bowed her head as she sulkily left the classroom and headed for Tommy's office. The problem, Tommy realised, was not the dragon. The issue was more to do with the wards that protected the Unseeing University. They were specifically designed to ignore undocumented magic, and because no one had written a formal report acknowledging Hart's presence, then the wards simply and politely ignored her entirely. This made the university the safest place for a dragon to live. The suppressed magic kept her warm, and there was plenty of books and furniture for her to feed on. "But if I leave," Hall said, "someone might try to regulate me, or worse still, register themselves as my keeper." She shuddered at the thought. Tommy grimaced. "Yes, I can see your problem." She was silent for a long moment. Half watched as her friend paced her office. Every fourth step she had to turn around and avoid the squeaky floorboard. "I wonder," she murmured to herself as she reached up to pull a large leather-bound tome from the top shelf of her bookcase. She placed it on her desk with a thump and quickly thumbed through the vellum pages. "There!" she pointed. "There is a form," she said, her face suddenly ashen. "Oh, Form 88C, temporary accommodation of large magical entities." "Are you saying I'm fat?" complained Hearth. Tommy presented her findings. Quibblewick beamed. "Oh, what a splendid news! We can simply apply it retrospectively." Ledgerfall hesitated. "It does, however, require—" She turned the form over in her hand. "An inquisition." Quibblewick sighed. "But no one expects the Inquisition." The Inquisitors arrived in their salmon-pink robes and matching sombreros. They wore identical expressions of mild disappointment. They stood before the dragon, clipboards poised. "A reason of our presence?" asked the Chief Inquisitor. Hearth exhaled gently. The clipboard smouldered. "Warmth," said the dragon. The Inquisitor frowned. "That's not an approved category." Tommy stepped in. "She's a heating consultant." Blasmere gasped. "What? She's a what?" "Yes," said Tommy. "Here to do a full review of our heating systems." The Inquisitors consulted their papers. They huddled together, whispering. "Well, it is cold, and wands, and drafty," said another. The Chief Inquisitor handed back Form 88C. Archmage Quibblewick saw the word "Approved" in big, bold letters. Tommy filed her report that evening. No dragon was present, only a heating engineer, here to carry out their annual inspections. Minor atmospheric anomalies resulting in the exchange of fire for smoke are now resolved. Ledgerfall read it twice. "Good," she said stiffly. Quibblewick nodded. "Oh, just another ordinary day." Returning to her office, Tommy looked at her door plaque. Someone had swapped out the word "temporary" and replaced it with "until further notice." Hearth was installed in a north tower which housed the main furnace. She was given a plentiful supply of coal and unwanted furniture. Tommy made regular visits to see her friend, bringing hot chocolate drinks and the meaty leftovers from the university kitchen as a special treat. The Unseeing University settled back into denial. It did, however, for the first time in a millennia, have plenty of hot water and lots of clean, if wrinkly, wizards. The end. Hope you enjoyed that. If so, please drop us a like, subscribe, all the usual stuff, and I'll catch you next time. Take care and stay safe.